It started with a text, one cold sentence that cut deeper than any heartbreak before. You live too simply with no ambition. Those words came from the man I trusted most, the man who had just admitted to cheating on me. Right after he left, he dropped that line like a final mic drop, as if my quiet life was some kind of failure. Funny thing is, I never thought I was simple. I thought I was steady, grounded, maybe a little underestimated, sure. But in that moment, something inside me snapped. That harsh dismissal didn't break me. It lit a fire. Little did he know, while he was walking away, I was already plotting my comeback. A comeback that would lead me to sign $1 million contract with the very fashion brand where he would later beg for a temporary job. Life has a funny way of serving justice, and sometimes it's dressed in couture. Before we start, type 1 if you've ever dreamed of getting revenge but never got the chance. No judgment here. And hit that subscribe button. We don't let betrayal slide around here, not even from people who don't subscribe. Let's continue. My name's Emily Parker. I'm 38, living in Portland, Oregon, a city known for its rain, coffee, and people chasing big dreams while wearing flannel. Before everything fell apart, I was what you might call steady. A project manager at a mid-sized marketing firm, juggling work, weekend hikes, and quiet evenings with my husband, Jake. Life wasn't flashy, but it was comfortable. I liked my simple routines, Sunday morning farmers markets, reading books at my favorite cafe, and cooking dinner for two. Some would say I played it safe, maybe even too safe. But I believed there was strength in that kind of calm. Jake, on the other hand, was different. Ambitious, restless, always chasing the next big thing. We balanced each other, or so I thought. What I didn't realize was how far apart we really were, especially when ambition started meaning something else to him. It all came crashing down one ordinary Thursday evening. I was scrolling through my phone when a message popped up on Jake's screen, right there, clear as day, from someone else. The words hit me like a punch. Flirty texts, secret plans, all the proof I didn't want but needed. I confronted him that night, voice shaking but eyes wide open. "Jake, how long?" I asked, barely able to breathe. His answer was cold and unapologetic. "Long enough." That's when he looked at me with something I hadn't seen before, disdain. "You live too simply, Emily, no ambition, you're stuck." Then, like a knife twisting, he walked out the door. I stood there, stunned, feeling small but burning inside. His betrayal stung, sure. But it was his words, that brutal dismissal, that planted a seed. If I was too simple, then maybe it was time to prove him spectacularly wrong. After Jake slammed that door, I spent a few days in what I'll generously call a strategic sulk. My best friend, Lisa, who's basically the wisecracking oracle of our group, wasn't having any of it. You're not auditioning for a lifetime role as the poor, simple girl, okay? Get up. Plot your next move," she said, sliding a cup of coffee across the table at our favorite Portland cafe, Java Junction. Lisa's tone was equal parts tough love and sarcasm, like she had a PhD in reality checks. I laughed, bitter but grateful. "Easy for you to say, you're single and have a whole collection of lipstick shades named after you." She grinned, "Exactly. And if I can juggle that and my crazy cat lady status, you can definitely crush this." That conversation stuck with me. For years, I'd kept a small dream tucked away: fashion. Not the runway glam stuff, but bold, wearable designs that felt personal. But honestly, I'd never dared to try. It seemed like a world for the flashy, the risk-takers, not for someone too simple like me. So, fueled by a mix of wounded pride and stubborn determination, I signed up for a local design workshop, a tiny step, but my first real one toward something new. That's where I met Mark, the grumpy yet brilliant instructor with a penchant for quoting Coco Chanel and sneering at anyone who used clip art in their sketches. "Fashion isn't just clothes," he barked on day one. "It's an attitude. If you don't have fire, you're just a mannequin." I remember thinking, okay, fire. Let's see if I can light that up. The weeks that followed were a roller coaster of late nights, ruined fabric, and moments of hilarious failure. I couldn't even sew a straight line without cursing under my breath. Lisa would text me memes like, "When your sewing machine is your mortal enemy." I learned to laugh at myself because if I didn't, the frustration might have swallowed me whole. But somewhere between the stitch ripping and caffeine overdoses, something changed. I wasn't just making clothes. I was building something I'd never dared to before: my own ambition. Jake's words echoed, but now as a challenge, not a judgment. I was simple, maybe, but simple didn't mean stuck. It meant I was starting fresh. And fresh was exactly what I needed. Breaking into the fashion world turned out to be nothing like those Instagram stories showing effortless glam and champagne toasts. No, this was more like a high-stakes obstacle course with fabric cuts instead of hurdles, and trust me, I stumbled plenty. After that workshop with Mark, the grumpy sewing sage, I dove headfirst into the Portland fashion scene. It was a mix of hustle, late nights, and convincing people that yes, a project manager with zero runway experience could actually design something worth looking at. That's when I met Rachel, the queen bee of a local boutique chain. Picture someone who owns a literal throne in her office, surrounded by a jungle of silk scarves and enough lip gloss to fill a small store. She had the perfect mix of charm and I own this town attitude. "So, Emily," she said one afternoon, tapping her perfectly manicured nails on the table, "you're serious about fashion, cute. Just remember, this industry is like high school with better clothes. If you don't have connections, you're toast." I smiled, but inwardly I was bracing. "Good thing I bake a mean toast," I quipped, trying to keep it light. Rachel laughed, but her eyes told me she wasn't joking. I quickly learned she wasn't the only one playing this game. Every meeting felt like a test. I'd walk into rooms filled with designers who glanced at my simple portfolio like it was a toddler's coloring book. "You'll need more edge," they said, or "this isn't couture," as if I was trying to crash a fashion week with a pair of sweatpants. One particularly memorable day was the Fashion Forward Expo, where I nervously set up my booth among the city's brightest. Enter Carl, the self-proclaimed fashion god, whose ego probably had its own zip code. He strutted by my display, snorted, and said, "Sweetheart, this is cute for Etsy, but here, you're dreaming." That's when Lisa texted me, "If he's a god, he's definitely a god of delusion." I nearly spit out my coffee. Despite the snubs, I kept pushing. Every no fueled me more than the last. I stayed up late perfecting patterns, learning to draft, even teaching myself basic sewing through YouTube tutorials, bless those strangers with infinite patience. One night I was so exhausted I almost gave up. My apartment looked like a fabric tornado hit, pins scattered, sketches everywhere, and my cat, Mr. Whiskers, snoozing on a pile of unfinished designs. "Maybe I'm just not cut out for this," I muttered to myself. That's when my phone buzzed, a call from Lisa, always my unexpected lifeline. "Quit your pity party, you're stronger than this mess. Remember what Jake said, no ambition." "Ha. You're about to make him eat those words," she said, her voice both teasing and serious. Her pep talk was exactly what I needed. Around this time, I also started working with Mia, a seasoned fashion consultant with a sharp eye and zero tolerance for nonsense. She was the kind of woman who wore power suits like armor and could spot a fake designer from a mile away. "Emily, darling," Mia said during our first meeting, flipping through my portfolio, "your designs have heart, but honey, heart won't pay the bills. You need polish, market sense, and a little ruthless edge. Let's get you from cute to can't ignore." Under Mia's guidance, I learned to balance creativity with strategy. She helped me pitch to buyers, craft brand stories, and even navigate the tricky world of social media marketing. But it wasn't just the industry that challenged me. Sometimes, my own doubts felt like the biggest enemy. There were nights I questioned if I'd made a huge mistake leaving everything behind. The sting of Jake's betrayal sometimes lingered like a shadow, whispering I wasn't good enough. Yet every time those thoughts crept in, I found strength in the small wins: a positive review, a returning customer, or a heartfelt message from someone who connected with my designs. And then came the whisper campaigns. You know, those subtle digs disguised as friendly advice. "She's lucky," someone said at a networking event. "I heard she's just riding a trend." My competitor Rachel, she didn't miss a chance to throw shade in casual comments. But I kept a secret weapon: humor. When Rachel commented that I was all fluff, no substance, I printed the quote on a t-shirt and wore it to the next show. Lisa loved it. Nothing like wearing your haters' words, literally. One of the toughest moments came when a big contract I'd been chasing for months suddenly fell through. The brand's decision makers chose someone else, citing lack of experience. It was a gut punch. I felt the old sting of being underestimated, the same one Jake's words had opened years ago. I almost gave in to despair. But then, during a quiet moment at the studio, Mark, the grumpy instructor who never sugarcoated anything, pulled me aside. "Emily," he said, his voice gruff but sincere, "the world doesn't owe you success. You have to wrestle it out stitch by stitch. You got this far because you fight, don't stop now." Those words stuck with me. So I did what any stubborn, too simple woman would do: I doubled down. I refined my designs, strengthened my pitch, and even learned to network in places that felt intimidating at first. I made connections, found allies, and slowly, the tides began to turn. After months of relentless grind, endless tweaks, and just enough caffeine to power a small city, something finally shifted. The small victories started stacking up: a feature in a local fashion magazine, a popular influencer sharing one of my designs, and the first real orders trickling in from a few boutiques around town. That afternoon still sticks in my mind, the day Rachel herself walked into my pop-up shop at the Portland Artisans Fair. She was wearing her usual "I'm the queen of everything" smirk, and I braced for her signature critique. But something was different. "So Emily," she said, flipping through a rack of my handmade jackets with surprising interest, "I'll admit this isn't bad." She paused, glancing sideways. "Better than I expected anyway." I grinned. "Lower your expectations next time." That laugh, light and genuine, was a small but powerful crack in the wall between us. Around the same time, Mia scheduled a meeting that felt like a turning point. "Emily," she said, voice sharp but hopeful, "I'm putting you forward for a showcase at the upcoming Northwest Fashion Collective. It's a big deal, the kind of exposure that can make or break careers." My heart hammered. This was the moment I'd been working toward, a chance to prove I wasn't just some cute hobbyist but a serious contender. Preparing for the show was a whirlwind. I designed, sewed, and fussed over every last detail, sometimes to the point where Mia would raise an eyebrow and say, "Emily, the world won't notice that extra stitch." But I knew it mattered. It all mattered. The night before the show, Lisa stopped by with a bottle of wine and a half-joking pep talk. "Remember, you're about to walk into a room full of fashion sharks. But hey, even sharks have to swim through the pond first." Her humor always grounded me. "Thanks, coach." Show day was a blur of nerves and adrenaline. The runway lights were blinding, and the crowd's chatter buzzed in my ears as models wore my pieces. For those minutes, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged: a creator, a fighter, someone finally being seen. After the show, I mingled among buyers and critics, clutching a glass of sparkling water while my heart raced. A buyer from a respected boutique approached, her eyes sharp. "Emily, your designs have a refreshing honesty," she said. "I'd like to discuss carrying your collection this season." It was the first time someone from that level showed real interest, the kind that translated to sales and reputation. But just as I started tasting success, the fashion world's undercurrent revealed itself in full force. At a networking event a few weeks later, a whisper floated across the room, my name paired with phrases like overnight sensation and luck. Rachel wasn't subtle when she cornered me. "You're new here, Emily, so I'll give you some advice. People don't respect luck, they respect legacy. Don't get too comfortable." I smiled, biting back the urge to reply with something snarky. Instead, I said, "Thanks for the tip. I'll be sure to pass it along to my imaginary assistant." Rachel's eyes narrowed, but I knew I'd planted a seed of doubt in her. Still, the pressure was mounting. Orders increased, but so did expectations. I found myself juggling design deadlines, meetings, and maintaining my sanity, sometimes barely. I leaned heavily on Mia, whose tough love never wavered. "Don't let the noise drown your voice," she reminded me after a particularly brutal day. "You're building a brand, not just a collection." Meanwhile, Lisa kept my spirits alive with her signature texts. "Remember, even the best designs started as doodles on napkins. Keep doodling, queen." The midpoint felt like a bittersweet victory, a breakthrough, yes, but also a reminder of how far I still had to go. Success wasn't a destination, it was a battlefield. And just when I thought I could catch my breath, an unexpected rumor spread that shook me to my core. Jake, the man who once called me too simple, was applying for a temporary job at the very fashion brand I was now negotiating a major contract with. The irony wasn't lost on me. I caught my breath, the weight of it sinking in. It was the moment everything came full circle. The man who dismissed me was now on the outside, hoping for a foot in the door where I was carving my empire. And just like that, the stakes got real. The news about Jake applying for a temp job at the same fashion brand hit me like a punch in the gut, and not the polite kind. The kind that makes you question if the universe has a dark sense of humor. There I was, signing contracts worth 6 figures, pouring everything I had into building my dream, and he was hoping to sneak back in as an assistant or some other entry-level gig. It was almost laughable if it hadn't felt so infuriating. Lisa was the first to hear it, of course. We sat in our usual spot at Java Junction, and I barely got the words out before she snorted. "So let me get this straight," she said, shaking her head with a grin. You're the CEO in training, and he's the guy who can't even land a temp gig. Poetic justice, Emily. I laughed, but inside, I felt the old swirl of anger and disbelief. Part of me wanted to really show him how far I'd come. But another part wondered, was this going to turn into a petty showdown? Because honestly, I didn't have time for that. Work ramped up. The fashion world is a beast that never sleeps. And suddenly, I was juggling production delays, demanding buyers, and late-night calls from my team trying to troubleshoot a fabric mishap that threatened to ruin the latest shipment. If I'd thought breaking in was tough, maintaining success was a whole new mountain. One afternoon, Mia called me into her office, the one she dubbed her war room. Walls plastered with mood boards, runway photos, and color swatches. She looked serious, the kind of serious that usually meant something big was coming. "We've got a problem," she said without preamble. "The big brand is pushing back on our delivery deadlines. They want faster turnaround, or they'll pull the contract." My stomach sank. After all the hustle, this felt like the rug being yanked out from under me. I forced a smile. "What do you suggest?" Mia gave me that look, equal parts coach and drill sergeant. "You negotiate, you make calls, and you find solutions. That's what leaders do." So I did what any newly minted fashion entrepreneur does. I called every supplier, tweaked every timeline, and pulled a few favors from contacts I'd made over the past year. I spent nights in the studio with my team, sewing like maniacs, fueled by pizza and sheer panic. But industry drama didn't stop there. At a networking event, a glossy affair filled with champagne and people who acted like they'd swallowed a thesaurus, I overheard whispers about me. "She's lucky," someone said. "Too green for this market." Rachel, of course, made a point to corner me later, her smile tight and sharp. "Enjoy the honeymoon phase, Emily. The real game's about to start." I bit back a sarcastic reply, choosing instead to laugh lightly. "Thanks for the warning, Rachel, I'm just getting started." Those moments stung, but they also ignited a stubborn spark. I wasn't just fighting deadlines and production woes, I was battling perceptions, stereotypes, and a whole industry that loved to keep newcomers in their place. My evenings grew longer. My apartment turned into a chaotic mess of fabric rolls, design sketches, and coffee cups. And if Mr. Whiskers, my cat, could talk, he'd probably file a noise complaint from all the late-night brainstorming sessions. One night, when exhaustion threatened to swallow me whole, Lisa dropped by with her usual mix of humor and no-nonsense advice. You're not just sewing dresses, you're stitching your future together. Don't let the craziness break you." Her words hit home. Still, the pressure was relentless. I faced moments when I wanted to quit, when the weight of expectations, deadlines, and doubt pressed too hard. But each time I reminded myself why I started. Not just to prove Jake wrong, but to prove to myself that my simple life was anything but. Every obstacle, every snide comment, every late night was a stitch in the fabric of my success story, messy, imperfect, but unmistakably mine. Just when I thought I'd finally settled into the brutal rhythm of the fashion world, life threw me a curveball that felt straight out of a movie script, or maybe a dark comedy. One chilly morning, I was sipping my usual black coffee at Java Junction when my phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line read, "Congratulations, Emily, your contract with Ellington & Co. has been approved." Ellington & Co. was the big leagues. The kind of fashion brand that didn't just showcase collections, they launched careers. My heart raced as I opened the message, scanning through the details of a $1 million contract offer to design an exclusive capsule collection for their upcoming season. I stared at the screen, disbelief mingling with a rush of pride. After years of grinding, doubts, and setbacks, the universe had finally tipped in my favor. But then the news hit me like a second punch. Jake, the same man who once told me I lived too simply and had no ambition, had applied for a temporary job at Ellington & Co. The irony was deliciously cruel. I told Lisa right away, expecting her to explode with excitement. Instead, she paused, then laughed so hard she nearly spilled her coffee. "Oh my God, Emily, so the guy who couldn't even commit to you now wants a temp gig where you're basically the star. I love this soap opera." I smiled, but beneath the humor was a swirling mix of emotions, satisfaction, disbelief, and a simmering urge to confront him. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I focused on preparing my collection for Ellington's upcoming launch, but the news about Jake lingered like a shadow. Every time I walked into the studio, every pitch meeting, every late-night design session was underscored by the thought that he was somewhere out there, hoping for a chance where I was thriving. The first time we crossed paths at Ellington's sleek headquarters, I caught his eyes from across the room, wide, uncertain, like a kid who accidentally walked into the wrong class. Later, Lisa joked, "You should have handed him one of your business cards with future boss written on the back." But I wasn't sure I wanted a confrontation. Instead, I watched quietly as he struggled to keep up, fumbling through tasks, clearly out of his depth in this high-pressure environment. One afternoon, Mia pulled me aside with a knowing smile. "You know, Emily, this is your moment. How you handle this will define your legacy." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. Then came the big launch event, the kind with flashing cameras, fashion editors buzzing, and industry heavyweights in attendance. The culmination of years of sweat, tears, and determination. As my collection took the stage, I felt an overwhelming surge of pride. The audience's applause echoed like a victory anthem, drowning out every doubt I'd ever had. After the show, I found Jake awkwardly standing near the coat check, clearly out of place. He approached cautiously. "Emily," he started, voice hesitant, "I didn't expect to see you here like this." I smiled calmly. "Neither did I expect to see you here, Jake." He looked down, embarrassed. "I've made mistakes. I'm trying to fix things." I took a breath, steady and composed. Fixing things is about more than temp jobs and apologies. It's about respect for yourself and others. I hope you find that. And with that, I turned away, feeling lighter than I had in years. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my power and proving that ambition isn't about loud words or flashy moves. Sometimes it's quietly, fiercely building your own path. That night, as I signed the final paperwork sealing my contract with Ellington & Co., I knew I was no longer the woman Jake underestimated. I was the woman who lived simply, dreamed wildly, and built a legacy on her own terms. Even with the $1 million contract in hand, the real challenge wasn't over. Success had its own kind of pressure, a weight that settled deep in my chest. Ellington & Co. was a powerhouse, and now every decision I made, every stitch, every design choice was under a microscope. But what gnawed at me most wasn't the industry's expectations. It was knowing Jake was so close, lurking in the background, his presence a constant reminder of the past I'd fought so hard to leave behind. One afternoon, I learned he'd been assigned to the mailroom temporarily, a position so far below where I was now that it almost felt surreal. The thought of him walking the same halls I did, not as a partner, not as an equal, but as someone hoping to scrape by, stirred a confusing mix of satisfaction and unease in me. That night, alone in my apartment, I sat with the quiet hum of the city outside my window. Part of me wanted to shout, to confront him, to make him feel the sting I'd felt all those years ago. But another part, the part that had grown stronger through every hardship, urged me to rise above. Lisa's words echoed in my mind. "You're not here to play their game. You're here to change it." I pictured Jake, probably nervous and out of place, trying to prove himself in a world he'd never understood. It was tempting to revel in his discomfort, but I realized that wasn't what I wanted. What I wanted was peace, respect, and the freedom to keep building my dream without bitterness holding me back. The crisis wasn't about him anymore. It was about me deciding who I wanted to be now, a victim chained to the past or a victor moving boldly forward. The morning after wrestling with those swirling thoughts, I woke up with a quiet sense of clarity. I realized that true power wasn't about proving Jake wrong or dragging him down. It was about standing tall on my own terms, regardless of what shadows from the past tried to follow me. I showed up at Ellington & Co. with a calm confidence that surprised even me. When Jake's path crossed mine in the sleek hallways of the fashion house, I didn't flinch or snap. Instead, I greeted him with a nod, simple, respectful, and unmistakably in control. He looked up, surprised, maybe even a little humbled. I could see the recognition in his eyes that I was no longer the woman he left behind. That moment wasn't about gloating, it was about owning my growth, the countless nights of hard work, the sacrifices no one saw. It was a silent declaration. I had risen above the past. That day, I focused on my work, pushing my creative vision forward with renewed energy. Every meeting, every design session, every contract negotiation became a step toward building not just a brand, but a legacy, one rooted in resilience, passion, and unwavering self-belief. Lisa was right all along. This wasn't a game of petty revenge, it was a marathon of resilience and grace. She reminded me constantly that true success is measured by how you handle your victories, not by how loudly you celebrate them. A few weeks later, I organized a private launch party for my new capsule collection. The room buzzed with industry leaders, friends, and supporters who had believed in me from the start. As I stood there watching my dreams take shape around me, I felt a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. I didn't need to rub Jake's failures in his face. My success spoke louder than any confrontation ever could. It was proof that ambition isn't always loud or flashy. Sometimes it's quietly persistent, like a thread weaving through every challenge until it becomes a masterpiece. That night, as the city lights flickered outside, I toasted quietly to new beginnings, not just for me, but for anyone who's ever been underestimated, dismissed, or told they're too simple. Because sometimes simplicity is just the beginning of something extraordinary, a foundation on which dreams are built, one stitch at a time. Looking back now, I realize that journey wasn't just about fashion or contracts, it was about rediscovering myself. Jake's betrayal was a brutal wake-up call, but it forced me to dig deeper, to find ambition in places I'd never thought to look. I learned that success isn't about flashy titles or loud declarations. It's about quiet determination, about showing up every day and stitching your dreams together, no matter how many times life rips them apart. Since that launch night, my life has transformed in ways I never imagined. I've built a brand that reflects who I am, bold, authentic, and unafraid to embrace simplicity as strength. The woman I was before. She's still there, but now she's wrapped in confidence and experience, ready to face whatever comes next. And Jake, well, our paths rarely cross these days, and when they do, I no longer feel the old sting. Because I know now that his judgment was never about me, it was about his own fears, his own shortcomings. I'm grateful for that harsh lesson because it pushed me to become the woman I was meant to be. I've also learned that forgiveness isn't just about others, it's about freeing yourself. I don't carry bitterness anymore. Instead, I carry lessons, growth, and a fierce belief in what I can achieve. To anyone out there feeling overlooked or underestimated, remember this: your story isn't over, not by a long shot. Sometimes, the simplest lives hold the most powerful ambitions. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't anger or confrontation, it's living well, thriving quietly, and proving your worth every single day. So here I am, still living simply but dreaming wildly. And that, I've learned, is more than enough.